Hey everybody, Johnny Cage here, welcoming you back to another game review. This time we're taking a look at Wingspan, developed and published by Monster Couch, with additional publishing by Stonemaier Games and Indie Nova, released September 17th, 2020 on Steam, which is the version we'll be looking at today. As you may or may not know, I am a huge fan of board gaming, and while I don't own many digital versions of board games since they are best played around a table with others, I had been highly anticipating the release of this one, which has garnered a slew of awards since its physical release in early 2019, selling over 200,000 copies by the end of that year. In Wingspan, you take on the role of an ornithologist, attempting to entice birds to your habitat in order to score points over the course of 4 rounds, and with 170 different birds possible to be played, each with their own needs to be met in order to play them on your board, as well as an area of the habitat they need to settle in, you can be sure that each game will be unique from the last. So let's break it down, because when you look at this game, especially one that's already in progress, it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed, especially if board games aren't exactly your jam. The good news is that the big reason this game is so popular and praised is because of how easy it is to play, taking a usually very complex mechanic in board games, that being engine building, and making it as accessible as possible with a theme everyone can relate to, even if bird watching doesn't exactly get you excited. The simplest way to explain how a turn in Wingspan works is to understand that you can only take 1 of 4 actions in any given turn, and most of the time you're already going to be aware of what you want to do a few turns ahead, which really helps to cut down on the playtime in between turns, especially when playing in online multiplayer. First of all, you can play a bird from your hand. Now to do this, you'll place a bird in either the forest, plains, or wetlands, depending on the locations available to the bird on the top left of the card. After placing the bird, you will pay the food cost for it, which is located just below the locations, and it's worth noting that you can always take 2 of any resource to make 1 of any resource you want in case you don't have exactly what you need. The next action available allows you to gain those resources by taking food from the bird feeder, with 5 different resources possible, although the worm and the wheat do have a better chance of appearing than the others. Also, it's important to know that when there's only 1 food left, or the only food left are of the same type, you can re-roll the 5 dice in hopes of getting what you need. Third is the laying eggs option, where you will place eggs on the birds that you've already played, with the amount of eggs a bird can hold being indicated on the bottom of their card. Throughout the game, you will need eggs to play birds in columns beyond the first. For columns 2 and 3, you'll need 1 egg plus the bird's food to put it into play, while in the 4th and 5th column, you need 2 eggs and their necessary food. Also, at the end of the game, each egg on a bird is worth 1 point, making it not at all unusual for players to spend the last few turns of the game just filling up their birds with eggs for max points. Lastly, you can draw more bird cards. There are always 3 available for you to choose from at any time, though if you don't see any that are to your liking, you can always try your luck and draw blindly from the top of the deck. As the game begins, you will choose a mix of birds and resources to begin with equal to 5. For example, you could choose to keep 2 birds and 3 resources. That might be enough to fulfill the food requirements for both of those birds. You also will pick 1 of 2 bonus cards, which can have a great impact on the birds that you will select for the game, such as wanting a number of them to have certain nests or having a color in their name. Now that you know the basics of the game, it's time to get into what people really love about it, which is building a bird-powered engine to lead you to victory. By engine building, what I mean is selecting 1 of the 3 actions besides playing a bird, which will either get you food, eggs, or more bird cards, but will also trigger the actions of the birds you have previously played in that particular area. For example, here I am using the gain food from the bird feeder action, which would usually only garner 2 food, but after the food is selected, the brown when activated abilities of each bird will trigger from right to left, first getting a wheat from the supply, then the worm, and finally the berry, getting 5 resources for the price of 2. You can also build similar engines in each row, gaining you more eggs or drawing more cards than what is listed, and if you have some more questions, you can always go through the game's tutorial, which goes into greater detail on what I've explained here. If there's another huge reason people love this game so much, it has to be because of how welcoming it is. Now sure, a more experienced player will usually be able to put together a better engine than someone playing for their first time, but most of the time you're playing this game completely solitaire anyway, focusing on your own bonus cards and trying to earn additional bonus points at the end of each of the 4 rounds by completing specific objectives, like having the most eggs on your birds in the wetlands, for instance. In fact, this game is so friendly that when I play it with other people, we'll openly just chat about how bad our hand of birds is, or how there's no way we're going to be getting bonus points at the end of the game for our bonus card, and it doesn't really matter that much because open information like that has no consequence in this game. Wingspan certainly promotes an enjoyable time more than anything else, though you will occasionally get irked when someone takes a food from the bird feeder you really needed, and there are a small number of birds that have an action that activates when another player performs a particular action, though those aren't something another player would avoid doing just because a bird with that ability is in play. So, how does this board game translate digitally? Well, the short answer is it does a pretty good job. Having been used to seeing the playmat out in front of me with the physical version, it was a bit jarring having to scroll through the 3 rows and clicking the draw cards option to get a better look at the birds available. There is another view if you would like that shows the playmat in a similar fashion as to how it looks in the board game, but here you'll have to scroll up and down to see the bird's abilities, so I stuck with the default. When it comes to the turn-to-turn gameplay, it is nice having the AI move swiftly through their turns on either an easy or normal difficulty. It also plays 1 to 5 in pass-and-play fashion if you so desire. The digital version even includes the Automa playstyle, which was designed as a way for the board game to be played with just one player, which is a nice and somewhat unexpected touch, though you can just create a game with 4 AI opponents, which is a better simulation of a real game than what the Automa offers. The reason for that being the Automa performs actions that a regular player wouldn't be able to, such as removing all food of a certain type from the bird feeder or discarding all the birds available to be drawn. Perhaps you could consider this a sort of challenge mode, but for me it's a pass. Though most people are going to be picking this up for its multiplayer options, that might actually be where this version of the game requires the most work. Currently you can play a real-time game with up to 5 people, which is to be expected, but each player is allowed 5 minutes to perform an action that should usually take no more than 20 seconds. Hopefully this is dropped down to 2 or 3 minutes in the future, as this game is played quite quickly when all parties are familiar with it, the average 3-player game lasting no more than 30 minutes. If you really want to slow things down, and I do mean slow things down, well, you can always opt for the asynchronous play, which has the possibility to keep you busy for weeks on end, with each turn being allowed an astounding 24 hours. I know these kind of options exist in other games, but then again, this is meant to be a quick set and seems very out of place here. In the looks department, the game is as beautiful as its physical counterpart, with its soft pastels and eye-pleasing backgrounds. Each bird has its own animation to go along with it when played, which was much appreciated and added some liveliness to the whole experience. The music fits the tone of bird watching, if there is such a thing, with simple, easy listening melodies as well as narration to go with each bird when played, stating its name and trivia, making this both a fun and educational time for all. You can even select to remove the interface sounds, as well as adjust different audio sliders in the game to complete the immersion. Wingspan sells for $20 American with 1 to 5 players locally or online, with an expected release on the Nintendo Switch in the fall of 2020. There's no way around the fact this game is going to be a hard sell for anyone not into board games, with a less than thrilling theme and appearing to be quite complicated at first glance. And sure, it's not going to be for everyone, but what I can say is that board games have come a long way since Monopoly, and if you have some positive memories of sitting around a table with family and friends but aren't aware of where the hobby has gone in the past 10 years or so, this game will give you a good idea of what new board games have to offer. The online multiplayer does need some work done to it with the options that are available, and with this being a new game, there are various bugs that have been documented in the discussion boards on Steam, which I'm sure will be ironed out in time. Despite its shortcomings in the online multiplayer department, I'm going to give Wingspan a wing-flappy 9 out of 10. The board game version of this is without a doubt a solid 10 out of 10 for me, but the digital version does a great job of capturing the enjoyment it has to offer, and once you get a hang of it, you'll likely be clicking that replay button for just one more game. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you would like to stay posted on new game reviews as I upload them, please click the subscribe button, as well as checking out the link in the description below for my Twitch channel where I stream most evenings. I'll talk to you all later on.